Lawrence Welk carefully crafted and delivered to American audiences what seemed like one of the purest and most polished images ever seen on television. Each week, viewers were welcomed into a world filled with floating bubbles, warm smiles, gentle champagne-style melodies, and a steady emphasis on traditional family values. Everything about the presentation felt soft, controlled, and reassuring, creating an atmosphere that appeared almost untouched by the harsher realities of life. The music, the staging, and the personalities all worked together to maintain that illusion of perfection. Yet, when historians and researchers later examined his personal archives, a far more layered and complicated story began to take shape. Hidden within letters, documents, and private records was a version of Welk that contrasted sharply with the public persona he had spent decades building. These materials revealed a man who dismissed one of his most beloved performers over something as trivial as a visible knee, a bandleader whose wealth climbed to around $150 million, while many of the musicians working under him earned only $110 a week, and a television program that quietly crossed an important racial boundary while deliberately avoiding any acknowledgement of it. For many years, audiences never questioned the man behind the cheerful surface. Now, the evidence he left behind tells a different story, one that he likely never intended for the public to see. Lawrence Welk was born on March 11, 1903, in Strasburg, North Dakota, a small and isolated settlement made up largely of German-speaking Catholic families. Many of these families had emigrated from Odessa, which was part of the Russian Empire and is now located in Ukraine, fleeing both persecution and poverty. Inside the Welk household, only German was spoken. His parents, Ludwig and Christiana, did not use English at home, which meant that Lawrence grew up without any familiarity with the language. This created immediate difficulties when he entered school, where lessons were conducted in English. He often found himself confused, unable to fully grasp what was being taught, and feeling out of place despite being in his own country. The community itself remained closed off, holding tightly to traditions and limiting outside influence. There was no radio, no television, and almost no exposure to the wider world. Daily life revolved around church, demanding agricultural work, and the familiar sounds of old folk music. For many children, such conditions might have been overwhelming, but for Welk, they built resilience. He learned to endure, to push forward, and to remain determined even when he felt uncertain or left behind. Over time, he did learn English well enough to lead bands and communicate with audiences, but his thick accent never disappeared, becoming a lasting reminder of his origins. The hardships that shaped his early life began long before he was born. When the Welk family first arrived in North Dakota in 1892, they faced a brutal winter that tested their survival. Temperatures dropped to 40 degrees below zero, and fierce blizzards swept across the open plains. Without a proper house, they improvised shelter by turning their covered wagon upside down and covering it with sod bricks. Inside the cramped space, 8 people huddled together for weeks, relying on shared body heat to stay alive while the wind howled outside. Their food supply was limited to frozen jerky, and they spent their days praying for warmer weather while watching neighbors fall victim to hunger and disease. They survived by digging up roots and trapping rabbits, doing whatever was necessary to endure. That experience became a defining part of the family's identity, shaping the environment into which Lawrence was later born. Even after they managed to build a mud brick home, the memory of that winter remained vivid, leaving behind a deep sense of caution and a belief that survival required strength, endurance, and silence in the face of hardship. This mentality carried directly into Lawrence's childhood. At the age of 10, after completing only the 4th grade, he left school permanently to work full-time on the family farm. His daily routine was physically demanding and left no room for leisure. He woke before dawn to milk cows in freezing conditions, guided restless horses while plowing fields, harvested crops by hand, carried water from a distant creek, repaired equipment in the blacksmith shop, and protected livestock from predators such as coyotes. There was no sense of play or relaxation, and his father enforced strict discipline, responding quickly if expectations were not met. To anyone observing from the outside, it seemed that his life would never extend beyond the boundaries of the farm. With limited education and weak English skills, there appeared to be no clear path forward. However, beneath that surface, something important was developing. The relentless work strengthened not only his body, but also his mindset, teaching him discipline, patience, and the ability to keep moving forward regardless of circumstances. Despite the demands of farm life, music introduced a sense of possibility. One of his earliest memories involved watching his father play an old push-button accordion during barn dances. After long days of labor, farmers gathered together, drinking homemade whiskey, stomping their boots, and dancing beneath lantern light. When Lawrence was about 6 years old, his father allowed him to press the keys of the accordion. Though brief, that moment had a lasting effect. The sound and feel of the instrument stirred something deep within him. In that setting, surrounded by laughter, movement, and music, he experienced a sense of freedom that was missing from his daily life. From that point on, he became fascinated with music. He experimented with whatever materials he could find, even attempting to build instruments from scraps, including crude violins made from horsehair. He failed many times, but he kept trying. The farm taught him responsibility, but music gave him ambition. As he entered his teenage years, that ambition turned into determination. He asked his father to buy him an accordion of his own, which cost $400, a significant amount for a struggling farm family. After careful thought, his father agreed, but only under strict conditions. Lawrence would continue working on the farm without pay until he turned 21, and any money he earned from music would go directly to the family. It was a demanding agreement, but he accepted it willingly. Once he received the accordion, he committed himself fully, practicing for hours until his fingers blistered. He began performing at local dances and events, sometimes sneaking away while pretending to do farm chores. His performances were not always refined, but his energy and determination made an impression. People hired him because he was inexpensive, sometimes criticized him, yet continued to invite him back. While the money he earned supported his family, the applause he received gave him something more valuable. It made him believe in a life beyond the farm. When he turned 21 on March 11, 1924, the agreement with his father came to an end. Free at last, he left North Dakota carrying his accordion, wearing his best jacket, and hiding 3 $1 bills inside it. He had little money, limited English, and no clear plan, but he was determined to pursue music. The early period was difficult. He slept wherever he could, occasionally begged for food, and performed in small venues for very little pay. Some audiences welcomed him, while others rejected him. In one instance, after a poor performance, he was nearly chased away by thrown bottles. Instead of discouraging him, these experiences pushed him forward. He joined traveling groups and performed in small shows, including a vaudeville troupe that promoted him as the world's greatest accordion player. While the claim was exaggerated, it forced him to improve until he began to live up to it. Over time, he formed bands with unusual names, constantly adapting in order to find work. His breakthrough came when a radio station in Yankton, South Dakota, gave his group a chance to perform. What began as a one-week opportunity turned into something much larger, providing him with stability and exposure. Through radio, he reached a broader audience and established himself as a regional figure. As his career progressed, he realized that imitation would not lead to success. Instead of following popular trends, he developed his own style, smooth, controlled, and polished. This approach proved effective, particularly when he embraced the idea of champagne music, a term that captured the light and elegant quality of his sound. While critics dismissed him as outdated, he understood that many people preferred familiarity and comfort. His transition into television marked another turning point. By the early 1950s, he moved to Los Angeles and launched a weekly show, taking financial risks to make it happen. The program quickly gained popularity, eventually reaching a national audience. His image of warmth and stability resonated deeply, especially during times of uncertainty. However, behind that image, control remained central. The firing of Alice Lon in 1959 revealed this clearly. Though officially dismissed over a wardrobe issue, the real reason involved a dispute over pay. The public backlash was strong, and while he attempted to reverse the decision, she refused to return. His strict control extended to all aspects of his organization. Performers were expected to follow rules, maintain appearances, and avoid overshadowing the group. This environment shaped the experiences of many, including the Lennon sisters, whose success was later overshadowed by personal tragedy. Racial issues also existed beneath the surface. Arthur Duncan's role as the first black regular performer on a national variety show was significant, yet the program avoided acknowledging it. Despite this, he continued performing for years, quietly making history. When his show was canceled in 1971, he adapted by creating his own syndication network, proving his understanding of both business and audience loyalty. His success continued, supported by smart investments in real estate and other ventures. Even after retiring in 1982, he remained involved in managing his empire until his death in 1992. His legacy continued through reruns, archives, and ongoing revenue streams. In the end, Lawrence Welk built a world that appeared simple, cheerful, and comforting. Yet beneath that surface existed a far more complex reality shaped by discipline, control, ambition, and survival. That contrast between image and truth is what keeps his story alive, revealing that the man behind the bubbles was far more complicated than he ever allowed the public to see.